So welcome back to the seminar, and we will start the second panel, which is on governance for and the peace in Antarctica. We have, again, a very good mix of panelists today, and I will introduce them when they are ready to speak. So the way that we proceed with this seminar is very similar. So we have about 10 minutes of topical talks from all the panelists, and then we will have discussions, hopefully a few discussions among the panelists, and then we'll open the floor. So that's how we would proceed this seminar. All right, so we will start with Mr. Ivan Bloom. He was the United States lead for Antarctic diplomacy, including, of course, the ATCMs from 2006 to 2020, when he retired from the United States Department of State as Acting Deputy Assistant Secretary of State for Oceans and Fisheries. He is currently a policy advisor to the Antarctic and Southern Ocean Coalition, ASOC, and participate in the ATCMs in that capacity. And we have asked Ivan to provide his views on the current governance challenges facing the Antarctic, and if any, good solutions to those challenges. Thank you, Ivan.
Akiho, thank you so much. It's a real pleasure to be here. Many years ago, I lived in Japan, but I never had the opportunity to come to Hiroshima, and it's great to be here, and I want to congratulate Japan for its efforts in hosting the ATCM. I also want to congratulate Akiho, who I have known now for a very long time, and what he's done with Kobe PCRC is extraordinarily impressive. I mean, he's showing great leadership in training future experts and providing the best possible analysis of policy and other issues. So, Akiho, thank you and all of your colleagues. So I do want to thank the organizers, all the organizers of this conference for convening this seminar and for inviting me to speak today. This is a place of great historic significance, dedicated after experiencing the horrors of war to promoting peace. So it's fitting to be discussing here Antarctica and the Antarctic Treaty System, which itself is dedicated to peace and science. So this is an opportunity to talk about governance of Antarctica and its relationship to peace. As a lawyer and a former diplomat who worked on Antarctic issues, I find that these are matters that are worth exploring for the benefit of Japan, my country, the United States, and the international community as a whole. And I note the importance of Japan, one of the 12 original signatories to the Antarctic Treaty, hosting in the coming days the ATCM, the most important annual diplomatic meeting covering general issues of Antarctic policy. So today I want to talk about the significance of the Antarctic Treaty, the successes it has had, and the challenges it faces in the future. We live in a world that has many disputes, geopolitical rivalries, and conflicts. While Antarctica is not immune from such pressures, it is an area of the globe that has not seen military conflict over the last 6 decades, in large measure due to the framework established under international law. Thus, it's fair to say that approaches to governance taken in 1959, when the Antarctic Treaty was signed, have provided the basis for avoiding conflict in Antarctica, both on the continent and in the surrounding seas. So what success have we seen in terms of long-term Antarctic governance? The Antarctic Treaty sets aside Antarctica, the land and marine areas south of 60 degrees south latitude, for peace and science. The treaty parties conduct science in Antarctica, and the larger countries tend to have extensive science programs. Fundamentally, the treaty system creates the conditions under which science can take place without undue interference. And this is accomplished in the context of rules that protect the environment, which is a matter of priority for the parties. Protecting the environment wasn't a major concern of the original Antarctic Treaty, but it was added later through decisions taken by the parties and through the adoption of the treaty's environmental protocol in 1991. The key significance of the treaty system is that it has provided the framework for peaceful coexistence. Science is undertaken without conflict or interference. Indeed, cooperation is the norm. Fisheries are managed with overall effective management, and concerns about illegal fishing tend to be limited. Keeping the peace through demilitarization is a central accomplishment of the treaty system, and in many ways the most important one. The Antarctic Treaty was negotiated at a time of rising Cold War tensions and was designed to prevent the continent from becoming a place of political discord. Now, not only was Antarctica effectively demilitarized, but the potential tensions from existing territorial claims were addressed effectively. Through its Article 4, the treaty maintains the parties' differing positions on claims, in effect freezing the claims as well as protecting the positions of the states that don't accept them. This is the fundamental legal and political bargain that was struck among the 12 original signatories and has been accepted by all subsequent parties. The treaty established one of the first modern arms control regimes, and this allowed science and scientific cooperation to flourish. The provisions preventing military activity and nuclear testing have been widely acknowledged as a success over the 6 decades of the treaty's implementation. The treaty system has also established a largely successful system of fisheries management under the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, referred to as CAMLR. This is particularly important as fishing is the largest economic activity taking place in Antarctica, followed by tourism. Each year, parties representing both fishing and non-fishing nations gather in Hobart for difficult negotiations over catch limits, and for the most part, succeed in not only reaching decisions, but doing so on the basis of scientific advice. The environmental protocol includes a ban on mineral resource activities, which is referred to as the mining ban. This forbids any sort of mining or hydrocarbon extraction on land or in the ocean within the Antarctic Treaty area. The protocol contains many important provisions, but the mining ban is in many respects the most important and famous one. It has the effect of preventing a huge land area and ocean space from being subject to potentially success is the acceptance by all parties of the right of inspection contained in the Antarctic Treaty as well as the protocol. The right for any all parties to have confidence that the key provisions of the treaties, in particular those related to military activities and environmental rules, are being adhered to. Now there are, of course, serious concerns about the treaty system, such as its failure to promote marine conservation through new protected areas, failure to properly regulate krill catch, potential dual use of technologies, lack of adequate regulation of tourism, lack of transparency, lack of progress due to the need to reach consensus. So there's a lot there. But overall, Antarctic governance has shown remarkable success and resiliency. So with my remaining time, I'd like to mention just a few challenges that the treaty system will face in the near future. I've already mentioned some issues that need work, like tourism and krill regulation. But I'm thinking more broadly about what the parties need to do to grapple with to ensure that the regime continues for another half century and beyond. Now, nothing is gained without effort, and that is true in diplomacy. There are so many priorities in the world and so many crises that Antarctic diplomacy can lag behind. But parties need to spend more time thinking about their Antarctic relationships and how to solve key issues at the ATCM and at CAMLR. In other words, to ensure that Antarctica is effectively governed, it requires more attention from states. Current levels of diplomatic effort aren't enough to secure the future. In addition, the foundation of the treaty system is science, and the policy decisions taken within the system need to be based on the best scientific advice. For that reason, and because of the importance of Antarctic science to the world, countries need to increase their investments in Antarctic science and related logistics. Cutting back on Antarctic science moves us in the wrong direction and reduces cooperation that is key for the future of Antarctic relations. Lastly, I'll mention that protection of the Antarctic environment, both on land and in marine areas, needs our full attention. As climate change alters Antarctica and the world, we need to be concerned with Antarctic environmental resilience, protection of our Antarctic flora and fauna, and preventing harmful impacts of human activities. So thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Ivan. So we'll have Ms. Mirjam Hoogendam, is a senior advisor on Arctic, Antarctic, and Ocean Affairs in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands, and participates in the ATCM as the head of delegation to the ATCMs. And welcome to the ATCM community, Mirjam. We have asked Mirjam to introduce to us the discussion revolving around the concept of transparency, on which the Dutch delegation at the last ATCM in Milan submitted jointly with Australia and Republic of Korea a paper entitled Enhancing the Transparency and Engagement in ATCM and CP. Mirjam, thank you.
Thank you so much. It is an honor to discuss with you today the theme of transparency at the ATCM and CEP. I want to thank the conveners of this seminar for thinking of the Netherlands when including this theme. This very seminar, since its start in 2022, is an important initiative and successful example of public engagement on issues related to Antarctica. And a small disclaimer, I only flew in yesterday. Jet lag is catching up. If I start rambling in English or Dutch, bear with me. Transparency in the ATCM and the CEP is important because of the global relevance of Antarctica and Antarctic governance, as discussed by Evan, and the role of this yearly meeting that is about to start in the management and conservation of Antarctica as a global common. Transparency, communication, and stakeholder engagement in the context of the ATCM can reinforce public trust and legitimacy, strengthen environmental protection, and facilitate international cooperation. As such, transparency is closely linked with accountability and trust, education and outreach, as to be discussed tomorrow, and informed participation. But we also see that at the ATCM, there is a limited number of stakeholders at the meetings and limited information for the broader public. As mentioned, last year we introduced a paper on this subject co-sponsored by Australia and the Republic of Korea. And in this paper, we proposed the gradual adoption of new procedures and arrangements to enhance public visibility and institutional transparency. Several UN fora and other multilateral environmental agreements, such as the Rio Principles and Aarhus Convention, include greater openness, and could therefore provide inspiration or best practices for the ATCM. Specific measures at the ATCM level could be press briefings, inviting broader stakeholder engagement, for example, to extend invitation to additional organizations as organizations accredited to the UN, and to develop approaches for media access. Such practices could be reviewed after a trial period, with the option of including them in the rules of procedure. Another point would be to publish the final report earlier, right or shortly after the end of each meeting, and that the possible national practices could be publishing summaries and outcomes through official websites and through press releases, informal briefings and press conferences to inform the media and public of the agenda, proceedings and outcomes of the meetings. At the same time, we need to be careful regarding such steps. There's a risk of politicization, misinformation, and even longer meetings than there are now. However, we feel that the potential benefits outweigh the potential risks, and that the latter can be mitigated. So, circling back to the ATCM of last year, the discussions had the following outcome. There was a strong support expressed for transparency and a general support for public engagement in the ATCM. It was also noted that the host state has an important role in this. However, several parties were cautious, considering costs, logistics, and the effectiveness and confidentiality of the consultations. The rules of procedure would already provide transparency mechanisms that could be more regularly used, such as stakeholders in national delegations, invitation of observers, organization of press and public outreach events by host countries. Ultimately, there was no consensus on specific measures to be taken. However, the meeting agreed to add a new priority to the multi-year strategic work plan for both the ATCM and the CEP to continue holding discussions on enhancing transparency and communication. So what should be the way forward? A more ambitious outcome would, of course, have been great, but we have to take into account the specifics and dynamics of this forum. With this subject, we're in it for the long haul, with the aim of developing durable practices. Therefore, as a first step, we were encouraged by the broad support to bring this subject further. And we see the first results of that as well. For example, this year, the matter of earlier publication of the final report is again brought to the table to discuss. Also, the Netherlands is in contact with our current host, Japan, and other future host states on what could be our role in this regard and to share best practices. This offers opportunities to gradually improve these practices in the years to come and to keep it on the agenda of the meetings, just as was intended with the paper last year. We can evaluate what works, we can evaluate what doesn't work or could be improved, but in whatever shape or form, every change we make in this regard is one step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Then we have Ms. Kezban Akkurt. She is the head of Multilateral Relations Department in the Ministry of Industry and Technology of the Republic of Turkey and participates in the ATCM as a member of the Turkey's delegation. As we all know, Turkey is a contracting party to the Antarctic Treaty since 1996 and ratified the Madrid Protocol in 2017. Yet, in the ATCM, Turkey is still what we call non-consultative party, meaning a party without decision-making powers in the ATCM. At the Hiroshima ATCM, Turkey's application for the consultative party status will be discussed, along with other two pending applications from Belarus and Canada. So we have requested Ms. Akkurt to introduce to us the case of Turkey's application for the consultative party status and provide her views on the issue of consultative status within the Antarctic governance more generally, if possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and I would like to thank for the very kind invitation. It is a privilege to speak on behalf of Turkey at this landmark panel in Hiroshima, a city that stands of the humanity's most powerful reminders of the resilience. So Hiroshima transformed unimaginable tragedy into a universal call for peace. In many ways, Antarctica represents that same aspiration in the international governments as well. It remains the only continent of Earth dedicated to peace and the science. So, Antarctic Treaty clearly states that Antarctica shall be used exclusively for peaceful purposes, and it prohibits any measure of military nature, including nuclear and disposal of the radioactive waste. As we gather here today, under the moral weight of the Hiroshima tragedy, we are reminded that the preservation of the peace is never automatic. It requires vigilance, transparency, cooperation, and trust. So, and this is the why the Antarctic Treaty System remains one of the greatest achievements of the multilateral diplomacy. So, the 1990 Antarctic Treaty established a truly unique governance framework. At the head of the Cold War, states with the competing geopolitical interests close cooperation over conflict, so territorial claims were effectively frozen. Scientific collaboration was elevated above the political issues, and transparency became a foundational principle. Under the Article 1, Antarctica is reserved exclusively for the peaceful purposes. Under the Article 2, scientific freedom and international cooperation are guaranteed. So, under the Article 3, all the parties commit to sharing scientific observations, plans and results openly. So these principles were unique at that time, and they remain highly relevant today. So the treaty also introduced confidence-building measures for ahead of their era. All stations, vessels, and the facilities may be inspected at any time. National Antarctic programs are expected to notify others in advance regarding activities and also expeditions. Such mechanisms were designed not only to prevent mistrust, but also build to transparency itself. So, today, the Antarctic Treaty consultative meetings continue this tradition through the consensus-based governance. The 29 consultative parties carry decision-making responsibilities, while non-consultative parties, including Turkey for now, contribute through participation, scientific engagement, and multilateral dialogue. So, for more than 6 decades, this governance model has prevented Antarctica from becoming a theater of the geopolitical competition. So, in today's increasingly fragmented international environment, this achievement should never be underestimated. So, Turkey approaches Antarctica with preciously the spirit of the scientific responsibility and the constructive multilateralism. Since acceding to the treaty in 1996, Turkey has steadily expanded its scientific engagement into polar research. Particularly, 2016, our Antarctic scientific output has grown very rapidly. Turkish researchers now contribute extensively to the studies in climate science, marine ecosystem, geology, atmospheric sciences, and also environment monitoring. Today, Turkey has one of the most active scientific contributions among non-consultative parties. More than 200 Turkish scientists have participated in nearly 150 polar research projects. So our objective is clear: to attain consultative party status through science, through contributions, and through responsible engagement. So, as emphasized, Turkey has developed the scientific expertise, institutional majority, and the diplomatic experience necessary to contribute more actively in the Antarctic governance. Importantly, Turkey has also ratified the Protocol on Environmental Protection and its annexes, demonstrating our commitment to environment stewardship alongside scientific advancement as well. So, in this regard, we believe that Antarctic Treaty System should continue encouraging scientifically active countries that contribute to the system objectives. The strength of the Antarctic governance depends on not exclusivity, but on a meaningful participation grounded in responsibility and the scientific contribution. I would like to emphasize once again that transparency remains one of the most critical principles of the Antarctic governance. In an era of the growing geopolitical mistrust globally, Antarctica continues to offer an alternative model based on the openness and the verification. So, Article 7 inspections remain particularly important in this respect. They reinforce accountability, confidence building, and the mutual trust among the parties. We therefore strongly support efforts to improve information sharing mechanisms under this system, including the modernization and the simplification of the electronic information exchange system as well. So, environmental impact assessments, scientific activities, logistic operations, and the tourism-related data should be shared in timely, accessible, and transparent manner. So, Turkey also supports call for more proactive information sharing among all relevant parties and stands ready to contribute technical cooperation in this field, including capacity building, workshop-related reporting, and inspection procedures as well. So, transparency is not a merely administrative requirement, it is the mechanism through which peace is sustained. So, as we discussed governance and peaceful use today, we must also think about the future generations. In the previous panel, my colleague from Portugal, Jose Carlos, has also stated the next generations as well. So, the symbolism of the Hiroshima reminds us that peace is ultimately an intergenerational responsibility, because today's young people face different challenges than the previous generations. Climate change, biodiversity loss, environmental degradation, and ecosystem collapse increasingly shape their future. So, Antarctica stands at the center of the global reality. The rapid melting of the Antarctic ice sheets affects sea level rise worldwide and threatens vulnerable coastal population across continents. So what happens in Antarctica will directly shape the future security and also prosperity of the whole humanity. Therefore, protecting Antarctica is not a scientific obligation, it is also a moral responsibility future for the next generations. So this requires stronger environmental stewardship, stronger marine conservation measures, and a continued commitment to science-based decision-making. At the same time, we must ensure that younger generations are not merely observers of the Antarctic governance, but active participants in the shaping for the future. So, Turkey places great importance on supporting young researchers, early career scientists, educational outreach initiatives in the polar research as well. We particularly value initiatives that connect young engagement with climate awareness and international cooperation. In this respect, the outreach activities organized in Hiroshima provide an excellent example of how science diplomacy can connect historical memory of the future responsibility. So I would like to conclude with several reflections for our collective considerations. First, we should preserve Antarctica as a zone of trust and transparency amid increasing geopolitical polarization globally. Second, we ensure that the governance structures we built in the 20th century remain resilient and inclusive enough for the challenges of the 21st century. And third and last, we should integrate the perspectives of the younger generations for our decision-making processes. And thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Dr. Patrick Flamm, my friend, is a senior researcher at Peace Research Institute, Frankfurt, in Germany. And this year, he participates in the ATCM as a member of the German delegation. He's a peace studies scholar, so we have asked him to comment on the principle of peaceful use in Antarctica under the Antarctic Treaty, and more broadly, the concept of peace today in the context of Antarctic governance. Patrick.
Thank you very much, Akiho, and good afternoon. I am, as Akiho has already said, a non-official member of the German delegation. I'm here as a researcher. I'm a political scientist and peace researcher, and that's the capacity I'm speaking in here. Of course, this is not my first time in Hiroshima. It's my first time at an ATCM, however, and I'm quite curious and interested. But being here in the city of peace, I'd like to invite you to reflect together with me on what peace is. It's a word that is often bandied about quite a bit, but what is peace? And what is a peaceful Antarctica? What does it mean today and what could it mean in the future? So first, peace is more than just the absence of violence. And you have maybe heard of that definition. It's the negative peace definition. I'm not getting too academic on you, don't be afraid. But peace is also not harmony. Harmony often is just hegemony masked over, where there is no conflict even possible. But conflict is okay, and I'm saying that as a conflict researcher. Conflict is natural. What matters is how you resolve it, whether you can do that with peaceful means or whether you resort to violent means. And where I stand on that as a peace researcher, I think, is obvious. So peace is a project to manage one's conflicts, which are perfectly normal, as I said, through peaceful means, such as dialogue, consensus seeking, compromise, through rules and institutions. And peace is also a guiding principle somehow. It's not a box that you can tick, achieved peace, next issue on the list. Peace is a guiding principle, a process, a guiding principle like Polaris or the Northern Star if you're in the Northern Hemisphere, or the Southern Cross if you're in the Southern Hemisphere somewhere in Antarctica. It shows the direction of travel that you have to walk together with others. And by doing so, with every step, any other way of relating to each other, any other way of resolving the conflicts, for example, through violent means, becomes less and less positive, less and less possible because you've had that journey behind you. And that's what an academic would describe as positive peace, the unthinkability of violent conflict resolution. So how does that look in Antarctica? Here we have no harmony, we never had it, but also that's an unachievable goal to begin with. We have conflicts, and that's okay, but we have resolved these conflicts over 65 years through cooperation, consensus seeking, compromise, through rules and institutions. And we have Article 1 of the Antarctic Treaty, where it's stipulated that Antarctica is only there for peaceful use. We have the preamble that hasn't been mentioned today, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that says that Antarctica shall not become the scene or object of international discord as well. So that's part of that. And it just there's more than that as well, where peace is in the Antarctic Treaty System. But I want to focus on the toolkit of how to walk that talk then. And I think the Antarctic Treaty offers a toolkit that is still a good one. It can still be worked with. Article 7, just for example. There's more to that with the inspection rights and the transparency obligation that we've heard about, that you tell others what you're planning to do and how to do so. But of course, we've heard demilitarization, all of that, that's part of that too. But I wanted to focus on that toolkit that Article 7 gives us, because I think that is worth to be built on and improved. I've talked to Tony Press earlier a little bit about dual use issues, right? So that's kind of new, and we have to see how we can live up to the inspection rights and transparency obligations with these new technological developments. But that's a challenge that we can just face head on if we choose to do so, because these are tools and these are rules, but they need actors that are willing to work with them and within them. And that's the more challenging bit. These actors need to find ways to remain partners in Antarctic affairs, to manage their relations there peacefully on the continent and in their Antarctic programs, despite being rivals or even enemies in some other parts of the international system. And that's quite challenging. That is the mindset of a peaceful Antarctic spirit of cooperation, however. And this spirit of good faith cooperation is needed to find solutions to the existing conflicts. And more than ever so today, given the way the unstable and frankly dangerous world outside increasingly looks like. To use a cricket metaphor, and as a German having lived in New Zealand for a while and enjoying the silly game of cricket, I think we're on the back foot here a little bit, and we're playing in the defense for now. Okay, but there will be times where we can go on the offense again. But maybe that's a little note on strategy here. How can we keep this island of cooperation, or my fellow panelist has just called it a zone of trust and transparency, how can we keep that going while we are on the back foot? I think that's something that is important. Also, I would like to say that I think there are certain red lines because they are preconditions to being able to sit around a common table peacefully. Everyone needs to accept and respect everyone else as equals around that table. Otherwise, it doesn't work on the basis of the UN Charter and international law. So Antarctic Treaty partners need to find ways, guided by the Southern Cross, to work as that, as partners, despite being rivals or enemies in the international system. The rules and institutions, the aforementioned toolkit of compromise, confidence building measures, such as the right to inspect or the obligation to inform transparently, these are a solid foundation for this effort, in my view. They deserve to be used more and strengthened against the backdrop of actual and perceived securitizations happening in this space. So concretely to the delegates in the room, also beyond the ATCM, consider organizing and funding more inspections. I think they're a great tool that have not been used as much as they could, not out of mistrust, but to build confidence in each other, to continually build confidence in each other. As I said before, peaceful Antarctica is not about harmony, and it never was. It's about working through one's conflicts through cooperation, compromise, consensus, rules, and institutions. The toolkit to do so is still a good one. Dust it off, use it, despite other issues in the rest of the international system. One final note about the scope of peace and peaceful relations in the Antarctic, and it has come up in other inputs already. We heard about future generations, but I would like to maybe expand that even a little bit more. I perfectly understand that in the Antarctic Treaty System, it's nation states interacting, and only states that are members of the UN can do so. However, what about Antarctic ecosystems? What about krill or penguins? Are we relating peacefully towards them? Do we have the right rules and institutions in place to relate to the emperor penguin peacefully? Maybe there's a way here in Hiroshima to find a measure to be more peaceful towards this now endangered, officially, species. That would be a great start. Thank you very much. Arigatou gozaimasu.
Good, thank you. Now we have, I don't know how many times we use the term, the importance of future generation. Now you have that. So all along in our planning of Antarctic Governance Seminar Series, starting from 2023, the organizers have considered important to invite and listen to the voices of the ATCM's local peoples and the early career scholars. And so today, I am so happy to introduce to you a young, promising scholar from Japan with deep attachment to what the city of Hiroshima symbolizes, a world without nuclear weapons, Ms. Yuuki Tokuda. Just coming back from New York, participating in the review conference under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, Ms. Yuuki Tokuda is a PhD candidate at the Hitotsubashi University in Tokyo, Japan, specializing in nuclear disarmament and gender perspectives in security. She is the founder of an organization called Genuine, a Japan-based organization that advocates for nuclear abolition through a gender-sensitive lens. Her commitment to disarmament was shaped by a formative encounter with a hibakusha in Hiroshima when she was junior or high school days. She may not be an expert on Antarctic governance, but her insights into the nuclear-free world and gender sensitivities, I believe, have a great significance for the future of Antarctica. So, Ms. Yuuki Tokuda, please, thank you.
Thank you so much for introducing, and good afternoon, everyone. So, first of all, I would like to express my sincere gratitude for the opportunity to speak at this event. So, my name is Yuuki Tokuda, and I'm a PhD student specializing the nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation issues at Hitotsubashi University. So, and I began my PhD journey in this April. So, yeah, I'm so happy to hear. Yeah. And so for the past 6 years, I have had the privilege for participating the international meeting as a part of civil society delegations, including the NPT treaty, and also, yeah. And today's subtitle is the message from Hiroshima. So although I live in Tokyo, other than Hiroshima, but I have worked closely with Hibakusha, atomic bomb survivors, and also the affected communities, people who are suffering from the nuclear testing. So, so drawing both that experiences and my academic background, I would like to share 3 reflections on significance of the Antarctic treaty system. So first is from perspective of the nuclear non-proliferations, nuclear weapon-free zone among the most important institutional tools for reducing nuclear risks. But this is unfortunate because Antarctica was the first large region of the world to be largely demilitarized and protected from nuclear explosion. But at the Cold War, states agreed to preserve an entire continent for peace and science. And more than 60 years later, the commitment remained intact. So at the time when the international security environment is deteriorating rapidly, this achievement deserves renewed attention. So Antarctica reminds us that even in the periods of intense geopolitical rivalry, states can choose cooperations over confrontations. And the second point is the lessons from the implementations of Antarctica Treaty. So I would like to focus in on the inspection part of this treaty. So one of the most impressive features of the Antarctic Treaty is its inspection system, I guess. So on-site inspection are an essential for verification measures. Of course, Antarctic context and also the nuclear issues context. And but in the field of nuclear disarmament, there is growing discussion about how to rebuild or strengthen the verification and confidence building measures, so including on-site inspection. So in this regard, I believe there is a much that other regimes can learn from Antarctica. So the Antarctica Treaty demonstrates the compliance mechanism are not merely technical provision, they are practical tools for sustaining the trust. And the last point is outreach and public engagement regarding this topic. So despite its remarkable success, public awareness of Antarctic Treaty system remains limited, I guess. So this is unfortunate given its significance as one of the world's most successful examples of peaceful international cooperations. So that is why events like this one are so important, and I hope they continue. When I told friends in Hiroshima about this event, many were surprised to learn about this, and a few people know that the conference will be held, and also the side event. So, this suggests that there will still considerable room to broaden engagement, including with interested members of civil society and, of course, the younger generations. And like to note, I recently saw on the social media that Peace and Environmental Group in Hiroshima are organizing an event called Hiroshima Penguin Conference related to the Antarctic issues. So I must admit that in terms of humor, it is very hard to compete with the title. But I also think it reflects something important. So people are eager to connect the story of Antarctica with broader conversation about peace, disarmament, and environmental protections. So there may be valuable lessons in that approach to outreach, I believe. So for those of us working in nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation, Antarctica offers a powerful example. So it shows that entire region can be kept free from military competitions, and verification and inspection can be sustained trust, and peaceful governance can be maintained over generations. So at the time of growing geopolitical tensions, these lessons are most relevant than ever. So Antarctica is not only a continent at the end of the world, and it is one of the humanity's most successful experiments in institutionalized peace. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Yuuki. I'm very glad that we have her today. Of course, I didn't know her until this seminar, but it was great that we have her today. And I think as the organizer of this seminar, I think I should think about the maybe subtitle of this seminar, maybe, I don't know, a message from Hiroshima penguins, I don't know, something like that, so that it can attract more audience here. But we do actually have a very good audience today, full house, and of course, because it is only in English, it might have been a little bit difficult for the ordinary Japanese to come here to listen to us. But we'll try. Thank you very much for that suggestion. Thank you. So we'll have some discussions, maybe amongst the panelists, if there is any, and we'll go back to the audience. So we do have a good time for discussions. Do you have any questions or comments with regard to the other, I don't know, others' comments or other talks? Do you have anything amongst yourself you might want to ask? All right. Okay. So Patrick may have something. Yes, please.
Yes, thank you. It's something I've been wondering about when Evan was speaking, and maybe he has a thought about that, because when I talk about the Antarctic to others engaged in the Antarctic space, I often hear that things are getting harder, and it's kind of geopolitics is back and all of that, or politics is back. And I would argue that politics was never away; it was always there. It was just like buffered within the system, and maybe that's changing a little bit, and we need to readjust that. To keep it going. But I was wondering if that's the case, if it never was away, geopolitics, and we have just the last 35 years, which were a very special historical moment in our bones, because most of us lived through them. What do we know about how peaceful coexistence looked in the 1970s and 1980s? And is that what we're going to see in the next few years and decades? Is it a back to the future story with peaceful coexistence? I'm not sure whether that's positive or negative.
Of course, maybe Ivan may be thinking, of course he'll answer, don't worry about that. But any other comments or questions to the others? And when he shows me the sign that he's ready, he can, of course, he can go ahead. Thank you.
So I wasn't part of the treaty system in the 70s and the 80s, so I can't, I don't have no personal experience. There's no question that politics and the sort of the give and take of international relations has always been part of the treaty system. So not everyone sees that unless one is in the middle of the meetings. but the tensions between claimant states and non-claimant states and fishing nations and non-fishing nations and a whole suite of different issues are always there and in the background. For the UK and Argentina over the Malvinas, there's been a constant topic of, sort of discussion. Yeah, things didn't sort of completely come undone, but we did see that after, especially the further invasion of Ukraine by Russia, the things got more tense and more difficult within the meetings. And that is true globally. See it in the Arctic, see it in the Antarctic. So for me, it isn't exactly a sea change of everything was kind of wonderful and then now it's different. But at the same time, the willingness of states to talk to each other. I mean, during my period of service in the State Department, we had very open channels with China and Russia. I mean, these are sort of rival states, but it was possible in the context of not only Antarctic cooperation, but overall oceans policy cooperation. In the context of Russia now, that's much more difficult. But yeah, I think there's always a kind of a continuum, but it's not as if those tensions weren't there before.
Thank you. Any other, I don't know, questions or comments regarding the issue of Antarctic governance generally, and the importance of transparency in it? I think both the transparency of the Antarctic activities and also the transparency of the meetings itself. I think those are the two aspects of the transparency that we've been talking about. And the importance, especially for the transparency of the Antarctic activities, the importance of the inspection scheme and how we can strengthen it. I think that's also an important message that we got from this panel. And to actually keep and also strengthen the mutual assurance in a way amongst the parties. And yes, and of course, Patrick has raised the issue how we can keep this peace zone of peace with using the toolkits that the Antarctic Treaty has at the moment. Of course, he didn't go into revising or how do you say, inventing new tools. We may even think about that for the future. But at the moment, he probably thinks that the toolkit that we already have would be sufficient in order to keep the peace, zone of peace, maybe strengthen it. I don't know. You might want to touch on that also again. But anything from you? And maybe consensus making, consensus. I think Patrick has used the term consensus seeking. I think we have been seeking consensus always. But the issue is that we cannot reach a consensus nowadays on important and difficult issues. I think that's another phenomena that we see more often than not compared to the previous years. So I think those are the governance challenges I think we have identified through this panel. Anything to add from the panelists? Well, if not, I think we can go to the floor for any comments or questions. This is so difficult. Of course, governance and peace is maybe a little bit more difficult, more maybe sensitive, controversial than the science and the environment, but we do have one question from Katie. Yes, thank you.
Hi, everybody. Sorry for hogging the floor once again. Thank you for all of those talks. I've actually written down so many quotes from each of you, which I'm going to keep looking back on over as time goes by to re-inspire me, so thank you. Going to your question, Patrick, or your point about are we going back to the future? What is changing and what is the same? And one thing I guess that we're contending with now is that we exist in an online world a lot. So a lot of our discourse takes place via the internet, social media. We're digital creatures to a degree. And that offers challenges when it comes to peace in terms of, for example, misinformation. but also opportunities when it comes to things like transparency. So my question to the entire panel is, how do we harness the good bits and keep out the bad bits when it comes to online discourse?
Good, thank you. So anybody to start? All right. Yeah, of course, maybe Patrick will start and then, yes, thank you.
No, okay, sorry. Thanks, Katie. I mean, one of the, and I know you know this as well because you told me earlier that you're going to work on this. There's one of the most prevalent issues of misinformation out there is this myth that in 2048 the system will unravel or will be up for grabs, right? Like, and this just leads to so much scandalizing and scandalous media reporting, and it just skews the whole debate about what Antarctic governance is about today and in the future in a totally wrong way that is also irrelevant for us here, really, on the ground, but not, because it feeds back, right? And you find yourself arguing for the relevance of looking at Antarctic governance against these narratives that exist out there. How do you counter that? I think maybe I hope I'm not overly critical, but the Antarctic community could have done a little bit more earlier to try and put out information publicly available, easily available, that this is just wrong. So it could have been countered earlier, nip it in the bud. However, that's in the past, right? We can't time travel yet to rectify that. But then still, I think the solution is the same one. Just talk more about that, put out the information, and this is just not right. And then hopefully when journalists are looking for their stories, that's not the starting point they find, but they talk to researchers who do research either on Antarctic ecosystems or glaciers or governance, and they come and talk to them for their Antarctic story. But yeah, I think front-footing, in cricket again, front-footing here, the information, putting it out there, especially if you know that there's such a myth out there, I think goes a long way.
Thank you. Any other one courageous enough to talk about the online world and how the Antarctic governance will proceed? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I'm just thinking back to the COVID period when we had a CAMLR meeting that was essentially online, and it wasn't a lot of fun. COVID wasn't a lot of fun, but also trying to do that separated in these multiple time zones and all of that. So I don't have any answer on the question of online and the Antarctic Treaty sort of governance mechanisms. But I will say that the fact that the parties get together, well, twice a year in a way, once for CAMLR and once for ATCM, is extremely important. And originally, it wasn't clear that there would be meetings every year. And there were questions among the parties about, well, is that really necessary? Do you need to talk that much about Antarctica? I think, from my point of view, the answer is yes. And to bring all of these people together to one place, I think is extremely valuable. Now, it's also difficult because of it's the entire world, so many different time zones, that it becomes very difficult to have fair discussions like with everybody and keep them up at night and all that kind of thing. So, but you know that. And it's, there are some things you can do intersessionally that have a kind of online presence, but I think the fact that there are these meetings annually like this, where people actually get together and talk, not only in the plenaries, where there's a certain kind of discussion, but on the margins and the bilaterals taking place and all of that, that's extremely valuable.
Good, thank you. Mirjam, yes, thank you.
Yeah, so echoing the not much fun part of an online meeting, I think the ATCM is trying to catch up on certain issues. So we're this year discussing a data policy. That's not online participation, but we're getting there, I hope. to have these issues that arise with the online world or the world changing. To get there also in the ATCM. This year we have online listening in of delegates, so no participation online, but listening in is already a first step, which is also interesting in the discussion on transparency to see if there are options in the future for that. So I think that is we're adding good bits to the mix. And regarding the bad bits, I think it helps that we're in the discussion of transparency. We see what we can do to make reports more readily available, to help the information that is out there from a formal perspective. Also helps an online discussion, of course, on what we do with Antarctica and what we should do with Antarctica.
Thank you. Of course, at the moment, the online world is English-dominated world, and I think, especially in the context of Antarctic Treaty, the 4 official languages, English, Spanish, Russian, and French, they should be treated equal. And that, of course, sometimes becomes difficult when you have these online forums, for example, or even publishing some reports first only in English and then coming after that is the other languages. So I think there are a lot to talk about that among the parties, how they can proceed with the transparency, but at the same time treat those 4 official languages equally. Okay. Any other points from the panelists or maybe from the floor? Further questions? And of course, Tony has one. Okay, please, Tony.
It's not really a question, but it's one of the 4 things that I think have come out of this afternoon's both this afternoon's panel discussions, but the issue of consensus was raised, and so was the back to the future. And I know, for instance, if you're looking at one of the most contentious parts of the Antarctic treaty system in the 80s was trying to get fisheries agreements, agreement on fisheries measures in the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources, where the Soviet Union, as it was then, basically stalled every single conservation measure and conservation discussion. And it wasn't really until the collapse of the Soviet Union that changed. Now, we might be in a similar position to that at the moment, where bad behaviour might change with the overturning of particular political positions in various countries, and we just might have to contend for a short period of time, or maybe a little bit longer period of time, but not forever, but contend with the fact that just keeping the treaty together and keeping the legal regime and the legal governance of Antarctica together is a major achievement while the rest of the world falls apart. And I think that that's one perspective that you should have in the next couple of years at least, while it's very difficult to get over some of the extraordinarily difficult international crises that are affecting decision-making inside the Antarctic Treaty System.
Thank you for that. Do any of you have any brighter view of the future of the Antarctic Treaty System? Yes, maybe Patrick.
Unfortunately, I agree with Tony.
Okay.
I think I said we are on the back foot, and maybe it's time for a little while to play defense, but just for now. That's very realpolitik coming from a peace researcher. But I wonder about exactly that question. How do we keep this island of cooperation going? And it's sad that it's there, but I feel that that is the question. So I'm sorry, Akiho, to disappoint you that I can't be brighter than that.
Let's hear maybe Ivan.
So, Tony, that's really depressing. Just to say, it's quite depressing. I'm not sure I agree, though, because yes, it's true. Especially in a consensus-based decision, that one or more countries could do things that, as we say in the U.S., throw a spanner in the works and make things extremely difficult. But that hasn't happened yet, and I don't think we need to predict that it will. But I'd like to think that we can have a higher ambition than just keeping everything together. I mean, all of the people who have gathered here in Hiroshima, if all they're doing is sort of, trying to keep their head above water, I think we can do better than that. I mean, especially in the area that I currently focus on related to trying to get new marine protected areas. I think that's something where we can have the ambition to move forward through standard methods of diplomacy, of talking to China and Russia, et cetera, and all of that. So I don't want to give up at this point, and I don't think you do either. But I think we shouldn't just simply congratulate ourselves if we have some meetings where nothing is agreed and go to the next year hence and the same thing. That's not good enough.
All right. I have one additional view on that issue, and as an academia, I actually, in a way, agree with Ivan that just keeping as it is today might not really keep the system itself. The one important and crucial issue, at least for me, is the recognition of the consultative party status for countries, those qualified countries. So if the consensus is not reached, those countries would not be the consultative parties, and the whole system of the ATCM being a decision-making forum for those who have established a substantive research in the Antarctica cannot have the voice. That's really delegitimizing the ATCM itself. So according to my view, this consultative party status is very crucial to even keep the system legitimacy. So I hope the consultative parties at Hiroshima would address this issue carefully, and hope for my personal hope that the Turkey's case would be the breakthrough for this quagmire. That's my personal view. Sorry, I didn't expect that. I'm sorry. But yes, we do still have some time. Any further comments or? Yes, please, Patrick.
Yeah, just briefly add to that, so that I'm not misunderstood. I'm not arguing to simply keep everything ticking as it is. I think in order to keep it an island of cooperation in this world, we need to actively invest more into it, into the system, right? So I'm totally on board with what Evan has sketched out there with regard to more funding for science, platforms, more diplomatic initiative as well. Now, the world is not just getting more dangerous, but there's less money going around it as well. But that's a fight worth fighting, right? So just to rectify, if there was a misunderstanding, that was not what I was arguing. This was what I was arguing.
I wasn't as gloomy as Evan said I was.
Yes. Would you like to keep that on record? You didn't speak into the mic. All right. Any other final words, maybe a little bit brighter words from early career scholars or the younger future generations? Do you see a hope in the Antarctic governance?
I think we all do.
Okay, very good. Any comments from you? Okay, well, thank you very much for the panelists and for the engagement of the audience. We'll have a very short concluding session, but we have a very special, actually, a guest, a surprise guest, actually, from Republic of Korea. So please stay on, and we'll rearrange the stage, and we have the concluding sessions right away. So thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. So this is the concluding session, and the special guest for the conclusion is the ambassador from the Republic of Korea. So maybe Yunchu, could you introduce him?
Ambassador Keeyong Chung has long been associated with Antarctic affairs, including ATCM, CAMLA, also climate change. I heard the news that he is going to chair the next Korean ATCM. I'm relieved. Okay, so I just managed to ask him to say a few words.
Well, thank you very much. I'll be very brief. I wouldn't want to hold you between this and whatever is in store for you in this wonderful city of Hiroshima. So it is a great pleasure and honor to join you all here for this seminar. In fact, I'm rejoining the ATCM community. My last ATCM engagement was back in 2013 in ATCM 36 in Brussels, where I headed the Korean delegation along with Evan heading the US delegation. And I'm very sorry for being late. I just came from the airport to be with you. So, but unlike our Dutch colleague, there is no time difference between Korea and Japan, so I'm in much better situation. But I'm not sure if I can be as lucid as she has been. So, yes, I actually was very impressed by the insights shared today, and also the earnestness with which all the participants were approaching this very important issues ahead of us. And I also would like to express my sincere appreciation to Kobe University and Professor Shibata, sorry for that. And also our own KOPRI for organizing this really wonderful meeting. And I think the program's focus on science, environment, governance, and peace is very highly relevant as we gather in connection with the ATCM 48. And also the theme of this seminar could not be more fitting. Here in Hiroshima, a city that speaks with unique moral authority on peace, we are reminded that Antarctica is not only a place of science and environmental stewardship, but also one of the world's most enduring examples of international cooperation. I think they have helped, the discussions today have helped me reflect on fresh ideas for strengthening cooperation within the ATCM system, deepening trust among consultative parties, and ensuring that science continues to serve as a bridge across national borders. And I am also for expanding on the body itself to include, to welcome new members. For Korea, the Antarctic Treaty System remains a vital framework for peace, science, and responsible governance. As Korea prepares to host the next ATCM, ATCM 49, we hope to continue on this path of cooperation, building on the spirit of Hiroshima and carrying forward the shared commitment that has guided Antarctic diplomacy for decades. So let me once again congratulate the organizers for the excellent content, careful preparation, and timeliness of this seminar. And I look forward to working closely with all of you as we move from Hiroshima to Incheon, Korea, as we continue our common efforts to preserve Antarctica as a continent of peace, science, and cooperation. Thank you very much.
Okay, I'm just a biologist, and I couldn't understand the total story of the panelists because my English is so bad. But I've got a very big, important take-home messages. For my understanding, it's okay. The Antarctica is an experiment field of continental scale of conflict management system. The ATCM is the activity of the ATCM is such a conflict management system itself. So I understand is the conflict in ATCM, we found some conflict, but it's very small, smaller than the continental scale management system. It's very small thing. So we have to resolve such a conflict, I believe. And we have a long history in Antarctica, but the senior people have to have been kept that system of ATCM. Now, for example, the Evan and Tony, now me and Jose, have to keep and expand the Antarctic Treaty System. And we have to educate for the young and next generation people to expand more bigger to the Antarctic Treaty System itself. I believe so. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Could you, yes, that's right. I don't have much to say. Then, so this is again a series of efforts to actually outreach to the world on the Antarctic governance. So this is the one, and we are going to have another one right after the ATCM at the Awaji Island. So that's the information. And there, we are very glad to have an early career scholars session during the lunchtime. And so there, I don't know what they are going to do there, but they have 1 hour to prepare for it. So again, even though Antarctic governance is a sensitive issue, and there are challenges there, but at the same time, I think it's still important for us, like a scholar of international law, international relations, to explain the issues and outreach to the world, not only through the education, but maybe through the media. So this Awaji symposium will be live streamed online, and so you will probably see already on the website the Zoom webinar link, so that you can actually access the link to actually watch the Awaji symposium live online, and also that will be we will have the Japanese and English simultaneous interpretation, but not the online streaming, only at the venue. So if you want to hear the discussions in Japanese, I think you still have to come to Awaji. And online streaming is only in the language of the speakers, and most of the speakers would speak in English, so that's the case. And of course, this symposium will be video recorded as the same as this one, and will be put up on the YouTube. But again, the language will be only in the language of the speakers. So I really hope many of the Japanese audience would come to Awaji to listen through the interpretation. But thank you very much for coming today. Thank you.
my attraction to Antarctic was because something like this. To me, it looked to me that Antarctic is where good exemplary order is produced, and touchstone or test bed is provided. That was, for me, that was the reason. Model as well as touchstone, and science is behind it. But will we be able to keep it that way for the decades to come? I don't know. So in that context, I always have a such question like, if with no Antarctic Treaty framework, if there was no Antarctic, would Korea find itself rush to the Antarctic 1988? Or will we still be, then will we be there even after then? Something like that. But hypothetical questions makes no sense. Then my second question is, what will the Antarctic Treaty be like in 2048? And how we will be handling the situation? Well, that was, so I have 3 points. I think we still need agility. It's not quite rapidity or speed, but agility, being able to respond to the new needs or emerging challenges. And secondly, specificity. It's not clarity, but it's you are able to meet the demands, not in broader terms, but in a very particular ways. And thirdly, as a scientist, will our science be science that creates knowledge? Maybe we may need science then, science that answers. So in that context, it will be important and make sense to continue with this kind of deliberation. So at the next Korean ATCM in Incheon, I promise you, I will organize something very similar, and I hope you can be there. Thank you.